Welcome to the Growth Shift. I'm David Zylstra. Here's what I've learned after years in business. Every leader who's built something meaningful has a story, but the moment they had to shift, when failure forced innovation, when change became opportunity, when they chose growth over comfort. On this show, we dive into those pivotal moments, the setbacks that became breakthroughs, the strategic shifts that accelerated growth, and the frameworks that turn obstacles into opportunities. Because here's the truth. In a world where change is the only constant, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who've learned to shift strategically through it. So whether you're facing your own pivot point or just want to learn from someone who's been there, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Valentix. At Valentix, we help B2B coaches who are struggling with generating consistent, high-quality leads, automating their client onboarding processes, and scaling their operations without simply adding more hours or headcount. Most of the time, our clients come to us frustrated because they're bogged down in manual tasks and feel like they're missing out on the power of modern technology. But with the right strategy and AI-powered solutions, they're able to streamline their workflows, attract better opportunities, and achieve sustainable growth. If that sounds like you or someone you know, learn more at valentix.io. Now let's dive into today's episode. Today on The Growth Shift, we're delighted to host Anna Minto, the visionary founder of You Are Possible. Anna's remarkable journey, spanning continents and a distinguished 17-year career running global business for Boston Consulting Group, has culminated in her empowering individuals through profound personal and professional transitions. As the author of multiple books, including Parental Pivot and Maternity Magic, guides her clients to make informed decisions and shift their perspectives, much like looking through a kaleidoscope. Her unique blend of high-level corporate experience, deeply personal insights into life's pivots, and innovative use of AI as a collaborative tool offers invaluable wisdom for anyone navigating change. Anna, welcome to the Growth Shift.
Thank you, David. That was a very nice introduction.
You did all the work. I'm just telling them about it. And now your story is marked by global experiences. You mentioned from Africa and Europe to Canada and the US, and a significant career with Boston Consulting Group. Could you share with us how these diverse environments and your high-level corporate roles shaped your understanding of personal transitions in leadership?
I think personal transformations in leadership is such a unique thing, right? It's different. And the experience around the globe has allowed me to see different cultures and understand there's a lot of differences there as well. So you kind of dovetail in different experiences with different client needs. And I think it allows us to be more personal and do a better job.
You had a pretty impressive career, right? And Boston Consulting Group, it's no small company. Everyone's heard of it. What ultimately led you to leave the corporate life and such a, successful role and journey to make it on your own?
So my pivot point, I had come back from a 3-week RV trip. First time I'd taken 3 weeks off out to the Grand Canyon with the family. And as I arrived home, I was thinking about quitting, and there was a box on the doorstep. And in the box was a gorgeous crystal bowl from American Airlines, thanking me for flying 5 million miles in 5 years. Which, as a consultant, I then sat back and said, well, average plane goes how many miles an hour, and calculated I'd spent 3 months of my life in an American Airlines seat. So that was probably the worst decision American ever made, because that confirmed I was quitting. And I went in and I told them I was leaving, and they said, don't worry, you're just having a bit of a nervous breakdown because you've taken 3 weeks of vacation. I'm like, no, I'm serious. So it took me about 6 months to extract, and then I started my own thing back in 2008.
What was it about that, that situation, right? Having this nice crystal bowl delivered to you, because it's, sure, spending 3 months in an airplane is one thing, but what was it that you found that was subtracted from your life? Right?
Time with my
Spending
kids.
so much time.
My kids were in middle school, going into high school, and I was not present. I was busy traveling around the world. And actually, at one point, very near the end of my time with BCG, someone said, would you mind pop in by Tokyo on your way to London. And I'm thinking, Tokyo's not on my way to London, like maybe the other way around. And so the travel was just becoming ridiculous. So when I started my company, it was only working with people I like on stuff that adds value that was local. Because at the time we didn't really use Zoom. So I didn't want to travel. And that enabled me to spend more quality time with my kids rather than flipping on what was then the BlackBerry, trying to attend, soccer games and football games and whatever else.
Now, we all have multiple inflection points in our lives, and usually when we reach those points, it's not really clear what direction we want to go. It's pretty difficult to make decisions, on the spot or in a quick time frame as to, leaving a good corporate job such as yours, right? That comes with reputation and a high paycheck, to say the least, as well. When you were in that situation, was it a decision that you could make on the spot, or did it take some time ultimately, and that was just the beginning of the pivot point for you?
The majority of the decision was made on the trip back from the Grand Canyon in the RV. It was solidified with the crystal bowl. But it took me about 6 months to extricate myself from BCG. What I hadn't realized at the time was it's almost like a divorce, right? You're spending most of your time with this company, and all of a sudden your support is gone. I remember having panic attacks in the middle of the night because who was going to service my telephone, my laptop, like all the stuff I was used to. And so I was surprised in making the transition how difficult it was at that time, because I hadn't realized how wedded to 17 years at BCG and how much I relied on them and they relied on me. I'd had the same executive assistant for 12 years, and all of a sudden she's not there. So we see each other every quarter for lunch now, and that's great. But it was a real difficult time to go out on one's own and figure it out.
So going out on your own and figuring it out, what did that look like? How did you ultimately decide what direction you wanted to go?
It was actually kind of karma, I guess I would say. So I finally left BCG on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and I told my kids, Mom's going to be home now. This is all great. I'm going to take a garden leave. I'm just going to hang out for 6 months and figure it all out. And a client that I had been pursuing for about 3 years at BCG called, and they were not on my non-compete list because they hadn't actually done business with BCG. The president said, we need you to come and help on this on an org front. And I said, well, sorry, I don't work there anymore. Like, here's a partner's name at BCG. And he said, no, you have to do it. And I remember that night, that Wednesday night, like Google searching how to start a company, like what do I need to do? I had no name for it, so I just came up with a name. And I started that work, and it was about a 6-week due diligence, which ran right over the holidays and everything else. And my family looked at me and they said, I thought you were quitting BCG to be home. And I'm like, oops, sorry. Little mistake over Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. So that's how it all started. I was thrust into it very quickly.
So You Are Possible. What is your company today? What has it evolved to? And who's it that you actually work with?
So the company was founded as Transformational Change, which was mini BCG type stuff back in 2008. It was gender neutral. It was more about the consulting side. And then sometime around COVID, I started to think about how can I empower people better. So I went and got my coaching certifications. I now teach the Enneagram, blah, 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 a bunch of stuff on the resume for credibility. And so I am very focused on empowering people in the kaleidoscope of life. And that's what You Are Possible is all about. It's one-on-one coaching.
I'd love to learn a little bit more. And I think the audience is probably curious as well about how it is you came to that direction, right? Because you left BCG, you sort of inadvertently fell back into, a similar role as you were providing previously. But now you're talking about empowering individuals. Right. How did you make that transition or that gap? You mentioned around COVID. I mean, was there anything specifically during the consecutive years after 2000 and what it is that you actually wanted to do with your business?
I don't think in the formative years until COVID hit. And all of a sudden, we're stuck at home figuring out Zoom. And I thought, I can work with people through Zoom. I don't have to travel anymore. So that made a big difference. It also made a big difference in the people that I had touched in my former BCG transformational change world kept calling and asking a bunch of pretty personal questions. And I thought these people could maybe use some kind of coaching, not a therapist, but just someone to talk to. And I could tie that in with, so I talk about being an executive advisor, which means I talk strategy, organization, and the personal coaching. And that's kind of a loop together, which is quite different from a traditional coach who might have been taught to never have an opinion, to never weigh in, to always turn the question back on the client. So that's the magic power, I think, from what I'm doing.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on this methodology or this idea of shifting the kaleidoscope? How do you guide clients to shift their perspective or their vision and priorities?
I think most people already have it inside them, but they are stuck in something. Often they're either stuck like a juggler trying to balance all the stuff, so just, keep everything in the air. And sometimes they're stuck like someone who's been at a company for longer than they might have on a treadmill. They're just, like the hamster, just keep going, keep going. So through the coaching, the way that people open up is they start to think about their business, which is themselves, right? If you are CEO of yourself, what's your vision? Most people can't answer that because they've never thought about it for themselves. But it's the first thing that a leader in business is going to ask about their company. What's the vision? What's the mission? What's the priorities? But individuals don't have the opportunity to stand back and think about it.
I really appreciate the depth of this kaleidoscope analogy as well, right? Because within a kaleidoscope, it's filled with all sorts of little beads and colors, and
Yeah,
if you're looking through it
you
and
just
not
see
moving
it.
it, you see one
Yep.
pattern, right? And as you start to shift it and you shift the internals of what you're seeing, and everything really changes, right? It's a really interesting perspective, and from a high level. But and do you have perhaps a story that you might be able to share with the audience about how it is that you worked with an individual or a company leader, an organization to help them shift this kaleidoscope perspective?
So let me take an example of a woman who came back from her first maternity leave, who was very career oriented and came back actually after 3 weeks after the baby was born, right back jumping into to work.
3 weeks, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of shocking, but that's what she did. And about 4 weeks after the baby was born, she called up and she's like, I can't do this. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm having a breakdown. And she had a therapist who was helping her on that front. But she said, what am I going to do with my business? I think I need to quit. And I said, well, you don't really need to quit. Perhaps you need to, it's what I call surfing life. You're surfing the wave. It's not work life balance. It's kind of seeing where the wave is coming and figure out what you actually want. We went back and looked at what are your real priorities? What's your gravestone exercise? Do you want to be remembered for amazing business, or do you want to be remembered by your baby as being an excellent mom? And so she created a vision board. We walked through, we actually did a performance and potential matrix, but not for work, but for her life. So what were the things that she would want to measure? How's she performing in them now? And what's her potential to change that? And I think that unlocked in her a view of she's not just the CEO of the company, she's the CEO of herself or the co-CEO with her husband. And so how does that look? So that shifted the kaleidoscope. And I can offer allowing people to view it in a different way, but ultimately it's their choice, right? She chose not to. She actually hired a stronger team. She IPO'd the company and reduced her work hours, and she now has 4 children.
That's an incredible transformation. Do you find, I mean, it seems like this, but do you find that often with business leaders, CEOs, founders, they're not perhaps the CEO of themselves in the way that you say, because maybe they don't have a line drawn between their business and themselves, and everything that they're doing is just committed to and poured into their business, which reduces or detracts from, their own vision and value for their own
Yeah,
life.
I think that's true. And if I grossly stereotype here, there are two types of, let's say, CEOs. One is the high achieving, focused on the company, never home for anything with the kids, blah, blah, blah. And they end up so wedded to the business, they can't see their way out of it and have a lot of challenges in retirement and often end up divorced and with children with some significant issues. That's one path. Again, I'm grossly stereotyping. The other path is someone says, I want to do what I want to do. And therefore, I am choosing to say no, because every no that somebody says is a yes to something else. And they tend to have happier relationships, better relationships with their kids. And when they retire, it's just a migration as opposed to a complete attack on their identity.
So of course we're generalizing here, but going off of that, I mean, do you have any sort of advice or any perhaps actionable steps that business owners who might be in that position where they're more wedded to their business and their business's success than their own life and that their own happiness, the actionable steps that they might be able to take or anything that they can look for to identify if that truly is an issue that they're facing?
So it's amazing to me, these smart people don't look at themselves. So, I mean, I can play a plug for me and say coaching is great, right? It's a good alternative, me or other people. Most of us have put 6 figures into business school degrees back in our 20s, and then we invest 0 in ourselves. And most of these people are making significant money. So why not put a few $1,000s into yourself and get some support on this? So that's the one route, excuse me. The other route is have a vision. Do a vision board. Think of what does your life look like? And this is not a business exercise on a Word document that, has been spell checked. This is purely visual. What does it feel like? What do you care about? Do you have beaches in your picture? Do you have ski hills in your picture? Do you have family in your picture? How many more Thanksgivings are left with your parents before they likely die? So that's the starting point. What's your vision? And most people, I'd say 99% of people that I talk to don't have a vision and they don't revisit it. So they're not anchored in that.
Sounds like the approach you're taking to business now and to coaching and consulting is really down to earth, right? It's really practical and it's helping perhaps people identify within themselves, right? Yes, what is their vision, but what is going to need to change for them to get there? You mentioned a couple of things, right? Use terms like, riding the wave. Sure, life is going in direction. Which way are you going to ride that wave? And using the kaleidoscope analogy as well. So you have a very unique approach to working with your clients. And where I'm leading with this question, Anna, is that a lot of coaches are in a similar position to you, whereas they have a very unique way to creating really tangible and incredible transformations with their clients. But in today's market, it's becoming increasingly more challenging, right? I mean, there's a massive trust deficit that we're up against right now. You could say that there's a flood of coaches entering into the market, maybe not as qualified. It's being more and more difficult to stand out, right? Given your experience in high-level consulting and your focus on helping individuals navigate complex transitions, what are your thoughts around these challenges and what do you observe in the market today for coaches trying to gain exposure and connect with clients who are seeking profound change, but perhaps aren't sure, which direction to go?
So I agree. There is almost anyone can hang up a shingle and say, I'm a coach, right? You go and take a 3-week course off the back of the cereal box and you're now qualified. So there's a lot of garbage out there and it's all word of mouth. It is asking friends, who's a good coach? Who's your coach? I've had 4 different coaches in my career and I love them all. And I refer clients to them as well. So asking about the person is really important. Asking about what does a coaching package look like? And we spoke a little just now about vision, right? Well, that's very ethereal, but it sets the tone. So then what do you do? Well, that's where you start looking at where are you in your lifetime life? How far are you in your choice years? What are your priorities and how much time or quality time are you spending on them? And that enables people to get straight in their heads the strategy. And then we get tactical. Okay. So that means you don't take phone calls between 5 and 7 p.m. because that's kitty's bath and bathing and eating time. pretty simple changes. But I think you have to get very practical about what does that mean.
So for people seeking out a coach, right? I mean, this makes sense, right? You want to do your pre-qualification, make sure that the person or you might be working with is actually qualified and has the expertise to be able to help you, but also aligns with you personally as well.
Mm-hmm.
And from the coaching side of things as well, for those in our audience who might feel like they're in that position with their own business, battling against market noise and trying to build trust, trying to be noticed and draw in the right clients. What's your perspective on the best approach to take in today's market to grow a coaching business?
So I think it used to be LinkedIn campaigns, right? That was pretty powerful. I think there's so much garbage out there now that people don't look in that way. So it's very much about having a very specific brand, like what do you do, and building a network of clients who will refer you. And if that means that you have to give away a coaching package to someone in a position of power with a great network, you make that investment.
So building out a community, of course, leaning into relationships, looking for those referrals as well. I think a lot of established coaches are in that position where referrals, it's the lifeblood of your business, but it's not so scalable, right? I mean, you mentioned before, LinkedIn campaigns used to work so well. Is there anything that you're doing now or any actionable strategies that you're prioritizing that you are possible to cut through this market noise and move beyond LinkedIn campaigns and perhaps scale outside of a referral network as well?
I'm still learning, just as there's a lot of
Aren't we all, right?
exactly. So just as there's a lot of junk on LinkedIn, I get a lot of people wanting to connect who are going to find me business. I have 3 times paid a lot of money up front to have campaigns done. And so my belief is, and actually a big piece of advice to other coaches is don't pay up front, pay for performance, pay for an actual lead. Because if you can get just one lead in one company, and that person goes viral and tells the rest of the office about it, and then it jumps offices, blah, blah, blah. It grows really fast. So you actually don't need to have 100 different big companies. You need one or two. And I think you deliver better coaching because you know the culture. And when they talk about Miss CEO who's blah, 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 you already got the context in which they're having their challenges.
Yeah, that first conversation is so important, especially if you're in a position to actually build a relationship, show who you are, and really stand out from all this junk. I mean, now with AI in the market today, I mean, there's so much out there, LinkedIn campaigns, social media, emails, and unfortunately, so many people are using AI in a way that makes it so much more difficult, right, for everyone else because they're not taking the right approach, right? They're trying to remove the human element and they're getting further away from the relationship. Right now, on the topic of AI, and I know that you are using it quite extensively. I'd love to learn a little bit more and have you share with the audience what it is that you're doing, and perhaps as well take a look at how you're not falling into that camp of let's use AI for everything and let's move away from the relationship, but putting you in a position where you're actually enhancing your ability to build relationships with clients and prospective clients.
So I think AI looks historically, it's not particularly good at future predicting. So if you train your AI really well over time, it gets to know you. And I use ChatGPT probably 2 hours a day. And it goes from everything to how do I harvest my vegetable garden to my client wants to know more about managing up to, in fact, this morning I Googled a recipe and it said, but I know you don't like hummus, so I've taken it out of the recipe. And I'm like, okay, like it's learned me. So I think one has to think of it as an adolescent, meaning they're super smart, they're fast, but they're not always right. So, for example, and I'm not sure that posting on LinkedIn is actually going to drive that much more business anymore, other than get more followers of people trying to sell you stuff. But
Mhm.
if one buys into you should be posting on LinkedIn twice a week, you can go to AI, and if it knows you and if it's read your books, it can suggest a post. Now, you got to add in the human element on that, meaning if I posted stuff that AI just spewed out at me, that is not quality work. But if I also just posted myself, I don't have the creativity that AI can bring to enhance what I'm trying to say.
Now, there's a lot of coaches and consultants, leveraging AI in this way, and it can be very beneficial. But there definitely has to be a line drawn. What's too much AI? Where shouldn't it be used, especially in the coaching world? So, and with your experience, from your perspective, where do you feel that line is? Like, where does AI start to become perhaps dangerous, or it is actually a disadvantage to a coach?
I think it's very dangerous if you break your confidentiality, even though AI is not under a confidentiality agreement. So I never share with AI what the company name is or what the client name is, because I don't know 10 years from now where that goes. I think that is table stakes, right? You got to keep confidentiality. The other thing that I do not do, that other coaches may disagree with me, is I don't allow the meeting summaries to come up. Now, when I have had a meeting and I get the meeting summary, I'm like, oh my gosh, this would save me like 15 minutes after the client call, because it does a damn good job. But again, ethically, I don't know where that goes in 5 years' time. So I don't want to do it. My clients generally don't want to do it. And I think it can put a barrier between a really honest, open conversation versus, oh shit, I might be recorded. Where's this going to go? Sort of like we used to 20 years ago, you'd post that cute baby photo of the naked baby or whatever. You wouldn't do that today because you realize the consequences that can happen with technology, because technology is emotionless. It's just learning.
Yeah, the confidentiality and even moving away from, critical thinking as well as part of that is, or should at least definitely be a concern for people. So, with these things in mind, as someone who helps individuals clarify their vision, what are your primary concerns about the impact of AI on critical thinking and, the human element of leadership and decision making?
So I have had a number of clients who have actually chat GPT'd their vision board and literally come back with a vision board that something else created for them. And you can tell they don't have the emotion associated with it. I think humans, what value that we add is going to be on the EQ side and on the curiosity side and on the putting dots together and doing some critical thinking. I do think that AI is going to completely outweigh our data analysis, data gathering, all of that part. So the beauty of humans that can't be replicated now is to get the person, to get their essence, to understand what they're all about.
So then how do we go about balancing leveraging AI with maintaining our own vision, our own voice?
I think people now are 5 years ago, people weren't really using it. Now everybody knows how to use the technology. And some of my younger clients who are way more AI competent than I am are relying on it to do everything for them, which is kind of worrying because you think, okay, you got a 25-year-old guy who, whenever there's a question, he just Googles it, or not Googles it, he chat GPTs it. Well, how's that AI will take over if that's the only role you're playing is data gathering? So I view it almost like a library. AI is my librarian at the front that knows everything and can find stuff out for me. But I still got to decide what kind of book I want to read and how long I want to take it out for and all that stuff.
And your insights into navigating personal transitions, leadership, and the mindful use of technology are very thought-provoking and inspiring. To conclude, based on your philosophy of empowering individuals to make informed decisions and to shift their kaleidoscope, what would be the single most important piece of advice that you'd offer to our audience who are striving to achieve their own significant growth shifts and build a truly purposeful business?
So define your own purpose on earth, however you want to look at that spiritually. We've got 4,000 weeks or so on earth. Know what it is you're going to do here. Know your purpose. And then go for your vision and support information from AI. So incorporate it, but don't let it do the thinking for you.
Anna, thank you so much for sharing your journey as well as your insights and your advice with the audience today. For anyone listening who might like to connect with you to learn more about You Are Possible or to maybe even look into one of your books, what would be the best way to find you online?
So LinkedIn is one of the best ways. Anna Minto. The books are all available globally on Audible, ebook, and paperback. Just search Anna Minto books. Unfortunately, if you search maternity magic, you get a bunch of supportive pantyhose and things like that. So despite the name of the title of the book, it's better to just search my name under books. And then through LinkedIn, you can see my email, aminto@trchange.com. Or just call, reach out. It's what I call a chemistry and commitment call, where someone, we see if they've got chemistry and we want to work together, and commitment meaning like you want to do it. It's not being thrust upon you.
Thank you again for joining us on the Growth
You're
Shift.
welcome. Thanks for inviting me, David. This was fun.
Great to have
All
you.
right.
And that's a wrap on another episode of The Growth Shift. If this conversation sparked something for you, whether it's a new perspective on failure, a strategy you want to try, or just the reminder that every setback can become a setup for something bigger, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid change. They're the ones who shift strategically through it. If you're ready to build the systems that help you grow without the chaos, head over to valentix.io. We help businesses like yours scale smarter, not harder. I'm David Zylstra, and I'll see you in the next shift.